Please accept this as my formal surrender, Major.
Hey everyone, I'm Johnny, and today we're taking a look at what is probably the most famous bad guy gun in the movies, which is of course, the famous Luger.
Boy, she sure is a doozy. It's Conqueror, isn't it? What? Hi?
The Luger is of course most associated with the German army and World War II, but in fact it's a very old design, stretching back to 1898, used in dozens of conflicts. However, in modern cinema, much of this gun's history, in both world wars, has been overshadowed, with its distinct look lending itself to the role of evildoer sidearm in movies like Austin Powers, all the way to Disney of all places.
About that, I would have told you sooner, but it was strictly on a need-to-know basis, and, well, now you know.
The origin of the Luger is far more mundane than its dramatic use in Hollywood. The firearm was designed by an Austrian, Georg Luger, an accountant and reserve officer who became a consultant designer, specializing in firearms. Georg Luger would eventually refine an existing odd and unpopular, but mechanically sound design that would become the Luger that is recognizable today.
I mean, I f***ing hate guns. Although that one is really pretty. It's almost that Second World War.
Hey, point it upwards, sir.
The genesis of the Luger is actually a funny-looking pistol called the Borchardt C93, which was a revolutionary weapon and one of the first mass-produced semi-automatic pistols available on the commercial market.
Let's have a look.
Mechanically, this pistol is very similar to the modern Luger and shares the toggle locking system that has been made famous by so many horrific scenes on film. The biggest shortcoming of the Borchardt was its bulky and awkward design. That's a big rear end. Just over 3,000 were made, and it was ultimately not popular, and it's a rare thing to see outside the gaming universe. But the Borchardt is what Georg Luger transformed into the popular and commercially successful Luger. The early versions of the Luger, at the start of the 1900s, were actually first adopted by the Swiss, and not the Germans. Even the American Army bought 1,000 well before the start of World War I. The firearm also did reasonably well on the ever-competitive global commercial market, so it's never too historically inaccurate to see this firearm in weird places, in period films, anywhere from the 1900s onwards.
Enough! Assaulting a police officer is a serious felony. Arrest them!
In 1908, the German army adopted the now famous pistol, which would become the standard P08 version of the Luger, which is the most prolific version you'll see on film, which was used throughout World War I, World War II, and beyond, with sporadic periods of production up until the last rare commemorative pieces of the 1980s. The standard P08 Luger had a 4-inch barrel, but the German military did use a 6-inch version for the Navy, with the artillery version having an 8-inch barrel, shown here being used by an Australian soldier in the Anzacs World War I miniseries. Also unique in that it's being used with a broom handle stock. These artillery guns have an adjustable sight of up to 800 meters, a bit overly ambitious for any pistol. In World War II, the Luger remained prolific throughout the German military, primarily being issued to officers. However, they were not as common as some might think. In Band of Brothers, Corporal Hubler's character makes a considerable effort to find one, and discovers it no easy task.
Down he goes, right out of the saddle, like a sack of potatoes. Outstanding accuracy on my part, if I do say so myself.
What you do?
Souvenir collecting was popular in all theaters of war. The prized Japanese souvenirs of war were the military sword known as the Gunto and the Nambu-type pistols. Though the Nambu types and Lugers somewhat resemble each other, they have virtually nothing in common. Though the Luger was probably the most collectible and one of the most highly sought after souvenirs of the war, German officers and other support troops carried a number of different firearms during the war. Pistols were in short supply for Germany, restarting their war industries in World War II, and they used a significant number of captured foreign arms. They also continued production of foreign arms at captured factories.
Meer wapens de man!
The Walther PP and P38 are also common sidearms you'd find a German officer carrying. The P38 was even originally intended to replace the expensive Luger. It wouldn't even be unheard of to see the use of sidearms such as the classic Mauser C96 and its variants.
Machine pistol. Self-repeating. Takes 7.6 Spree caliber rounds.
The German Army P08 Luger used the same 9mm ammunition as the P38, also the same standard ammunition used in German submachine guns, such as the MP40. The Luger's magazine carries 8 rounds. Overall, it's considered light and accurate, often being praised for its balance and ease of use with one hand. Some enthusiasts criticize the Luger as being over-engineered and a better sport or collector's pistol than a combat pistol. Manufacturing was done within tight tolerances, but despite this, 3 million were produced.
You look like you could do that blindfolded.
I can.
One further common criticism of the Luger was its lack of tolerance to combat conditions, with the gun having little tolerance for dirt or dust. I'd say if this is the case, it likely had little consequence, as pistols such as the Luger for the German army were used more frequently in city settings during World War II, as pistols were less a frontline combat weapon in general. The German army used them for self-defense and policing in cities, where resistance fighters looked for attacks of opportunities on German officers. Today, the Luger remains one of the most collectible pistols on Earth, with some of the older and historically significant variants selling for upwards to $1 million. There are some interesting decorative Lugers out there, including ivory and platinum ones owned by the big man himself. Alright, I'm Johnny. Thanks for watching this brief on the Luger. As always, these videos are meant to be fun, and my knowledge is amateur, so if you have some real experience with a Luger or historical information, please share in the comment section below, and we'll see you in the next video.
Hubler had been talking about getting a Luger since Normandy. As we dug in, he went from foxhole to foxhole, telling everyone just how he'd finally got one.